Good morning, everybody.
Hello, hello.
So we have kind of a unique recording today, a really fun one. I'm super excited for it. We have a guest on today who is actually my daughter.
Hello.
This is Ella. This month is all about grief and loss, and we're talking about some important feelings and emotions that go around that. And I was in the kitchen cooking dinner one night when Ella and my significant other were sitting there and we were all talking, and I was like, yeah, I need to find somebody who we can put on as a guest speaker for the grief and loss month. And Ella goes, I'll do it. And I've talked about this often in different episodes. Ella lost her dad in 2018, so it's been almost 7 years, I think, if I'm doing the math right. And I was really proud of you for coming up and saying, I'll do it, I'll talk about that, because I think it's a really unique perspective from being somebody who's lost a parent, but also a teenager or a child who's lost a parent. So, yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah. So, Ella, how old were you when your dad passed away?
I was 8. I was 8 years old.
And did you understand what that meant at the time? Like, this was the first big loss you had experienced, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of the first major thing that ever happened in my life. Like I measure my life like that from that moment forward, I guess. And so when it first happened, I don't think I fully comprehended what happened. It was like nothing bad had ever happened to me up till that point.
And as a parent, was it, I would imagine it was extremely difficult to tell your child this huge, earth shattering news. Do you want to share your experience on how you went about doing that, Leanna?
Yeah, so I just went to work. She went to school like any other day that morning. And as I'm sitting at work, kind of beginning my day, I get a call from her dad's sister, who told me the news. And it was in disbelief, obviously, when you get that kind of unexpected news, like first out the gate before you even have your morning coffee. It's kind of shocking. Yeah, definitely shock. So the first person that I called after ending that phone call with his sister was my, I don't know, it was a previous colleague slash mentor slash therapist slash friend. Like, it was just, he's
Perfect person.
yeah, I was like, I'm just gonna call this person. That was like my first instinctual call. And so I call him and he answers. Of course, love him. And I'm like, this just happened. What the hell do I say? Because, like, how do you, especially in the circumstance, like, I think there's a caveat to losing a parent, but losing a parent by suicide, that's a whole different beast. And so how do you articulate that to a young person? Like, I had tried, like, as a parent to mentally prepare for anything that could come along throughout the life of, like, the parenting child relationship, but this was not one of them.
Yeah, that's not something you were prepared for, that you planned for.
Yeah. And so I said, tell me exactly what to say. And as he's telling me what to say, I'm writing it down because that was all I knew. So it's kind of how that went.
And he told you to take her out for like a really fun day, right? So you took her
Yeah.
out to school and you guys went and did some fun stuff. And then what did the conversation look like? Like, what are the things he told you to say?
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So the conversation, I just remember that day so distinctively. It was like a major, obviously a major day in my life. And so I remember I got checked out of school. We got our nails done. We got Panda Express. we went to a grandparent's house, and all my family was there. So we went and we kind of sat down in the family room. And I just remember my aunt saying, "We want you to know that your dad loved you very much." And like that moment, like I was like, "What are you talking about? Like loved?" I was like, "What? What do you mean?" And so then, obviously, I was told, and I just remember like crying and like sitting in my mom's arms, and I didn't really know what it meant. Like I just remember being like, "He's dead," but like, what does that mean?
Did they try
Like-
to sugarcoat it for you, like he's with the angels, or did they
No.
explain to you like what death is?
So obviously, I had a pretty good idea of what death was because we've always kind of gone to church. Like I knew what heaven was, whatever. I had an idea, but there was no sugarcoating. It was like he's gone, like he's dead, and I think that I don't know if that helped me register it quicker, but it helped me like know like he's dead, and like that's what it is.
Just the truth.
Yeah.
And the fact that it was suicide, I didn't want to, obviously, age appropriate, right? Like, I didn't want to share all the details. I didn't want to say, your dad took his life. Like, I didn't want to be that abrupt. So I had said, this is what the therapist friend, colleague, whatever, told me to say, is that he chose to leave this earth, you know. And with that took away any sort of idea in her head that it was like her fault. I've never lost a parent. You guys have, but maybe you could speak to that a little more. But I think that when somebody close to you passes away, your justification is, what did I do, maybe? So I was trying to, like, alleviate that.
I think there's a lot of what could I have done differently. Like maybe not as an 8-year-old. That's probably not something that probably occurred to you. But as an older person or somebody that sees somebody leave this earth voluntarily, there's always going to be those questions like, what could I have done? Could I have been a better friend, brother, sister, mother, sibling? You know, there's always those questions. But I find comfort, and I have to say this delicately because for people that have just recently lost someone, it's not going to really sound like a gift. But you see these divine interventions all the time. Like, so-and-so called me at just the right moment when I was getting ready to commit suicide. Or, you know, I was late to the 9/11 Twin Towers because I had to stop and get coffee. And because I was late, I didn't die. You know what I mean? Like, there are these miracles that happen. And sometimes I think we wonder, like, why wasn't this person given a miracle? And that's not really a question any of us can answer. I think at the end of the day, you just have to trust that if that person was supposed to be divinely saved, they would have been. And if there was anything you could have done, you would have been prompted to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's power in that, in knowing that, like, if there was any way for you to have saved that person, you would have saved them. But because that was not something that was put in your path, that was not for you. It wasn't for you to do that. And some souls, I think, are just not supposed to be here forever.
Yeah. Did you ever feel any of that? Like, when you started? I know, so I'm going to share, like, you had a late onset of, like, handling the grief.
Yeah.
So I think it was, like, a couple years later that it kind of came out and you were actually able to recognize the grief and work through that. Yeah. Did you ever have the feeling of, like, I don't know, I guess I should ask, what were your feelings at that time when you were working through it all?
Yeah. So, there was a little part of me that felt like, obviously I was young, so I couldn't really understand, like, what he was going through. But there was a little part of me where I was like, I could have spent more time with him. And even now, like, I could have been with him more. I I just remember not really liking my dad, which I hate to say that now, but just as a young kid, like, I just didn't really like him, which
Well, you're a
is
young
so
girl.
weird.
Like, you know, you don't
Yeah.
have any interest in doing dad stuff. You know, that makes
Right?
sense.
Yeah, which is so weird. Which now I know is like, I loved him. I know I loved him, but I just never really liked him. And so a little part of me just wishes that I realized what I had, and how important that was.
You had some stepdads, you know, in the time period that your dad passed away, you had a stepdad, and then you had another one after that. Do you
Yeah.
feel that that softened the blow of losing your dad because you had that like father figure for a while? What was
I
that
think-
journey like for you?
I think it definitely did help, because when my dad passed away, I had another dad right there to lean on. So it was like, he's gone, so I'll move, so now I can rely on this dad. And then when he left, I had another person in place. And then when he left, I had no one. And so when I had no one, it all kind of hit me, all the grief and all the loss that I had experienced hit me. And that's when I was able to resolve some of my feelings and talk about it in therapy and with the people in my life, and understand what happened to me and understand how to resolve it within my head.
You know what I love about what you just said? You didn't say that was when I had to deal with it. You said that was when I was able to deal with it. Like you were
Yeah.
given the opportunity to deal with it. Some people in that position would feel like, poor me, I had to go through this. But instead, you're choosing to view it through the lens of, you know what, this all happened and I got to deal with some of the grief and the hard things that I had been dealt, and I got to work through those. And I just want to take a minute and admire you for that, because not all teenagers have that
Mentality.
mentality, yeah.
Yeah.
And I just think that's beautiful. So,
Thank you.
you think therapy, I'm assuming, was a big part of helping you grieve? Because sometimes it's hard to talk to the people you're closest to about some of this stuff. Do you find that it's easier to kind of talk to a stranger about some of it sometimes?
Yeah, in that case scenario, it definitely was. Because I was able to understand things that were going on in my head that she could explain to me that a lot of people in my life couldn't. Or they didn't know how to explain it to me. And I feel like the therapist definitely knew what to say to get me to understand it.
I think
And I
sometimes
want-
if you're- sorry. I was just going to say, if you're grieving together, like sometimes that's a hard time to
Yeah.
always say the right thing because you're carrying your own burden at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Did you
I
have
want to
any-
say too, like with the therapy, there was a pivotal moment that occurred where she was like, I'm not okay. And she was able to articulate that to me. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happening in my mind, body, soul, whatever. But I'm not okay. And we were able to like kind of come to that moment together. It was a very emotional moment, but I'm glad that it happened because we were able to say, okay, next step is let's talk to somebody professional. So I'm really glad that you felt safe enough to like go through that with me.
What other tools do you think besides counseling helped you get through that time when you were dealing with all that grief?
I think having a strong support system just in your like day-to-day life, like having someone you can talk to, like whether that's like a family member. Like I know confided a lot in my mom, obviously, but I also had Kyrie, my best friend, to confide in, and I think that definitely helped me because while she was going through her own struggles, I was going through my struggles, and we were able to confide in each other during that time.
Yeah, support system is so important, friends. And I think sometimes we don't want to burden our friends with our problems, but I think that that's part of the beauty of having friends is we can burden each other. We want as your friends, you know, to hold that burden for you, like help you through it. I think it's an honor to walk with someone through their grief.
Edit.
Cough break.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that too, Holly. Having that support and from your family at that time for me too was super important, because not only was I, losing the other parent, I was also losing my marriage and my identity at that time. And so really having to hold it together as a mom was super important for me to lean in on my supports and you guys, your family at the time.
I think as a person, we don't often know how to help somebody that's grieving. A lot of times people are like, oh, they're grieving, they're sad, that's uncomfortable, I don't want to be around that, and they try to pull back. But I think the best thing you can do for somebody that's grieving is to lean in and just be there. You don't have to have all the right words. You don't even have to know what to say. You just have to be arms that can hug somebody and just sit with them in their grief. That is, I think, the most meaningful thing you can do for somebody while they're going through that, is to just be there for them. That's it. That's all.
Yeah.
So if you have somebody in your life that is dealing with big, heavy grief, that is my advice, is to just be there for them. Do you, Ella, do you have any advice for kids that are maybe going through that? What would you say to a kid or a teenager that has recently lost somebody that they love? What would you say to them?
Just find a person that you can confide in. Whether that be a family member, a friend, even a teacher or something. Just one person you can tell everything to. And because I think talking it out helps resolve your feelings. I really do. So I think having someone that you can talk it out with but also not really know what you're saying can help.
Just a sounding board.
Yeah.
What would you say you've learned about suicide specifically? What could you say about suicide to other people that are having to deal with loss of somebody that has voluntarily left this world?
Yeah, I want to preface before you answer that is because loss of a parent, like I said, is one beast, but having it be suicide is a whole nother beast. And a lot of the times when, as a mom, I don't think I've ever shared this with you, but as a mom, having the stigma of suicide with this occurring, I would tell people, because obviously people are just naturally nosy, I guess. And so when it was coming out on social media and stuff that this happened, everybody's like, what happened, because it was very abrupt. And so I was natural and raw. I was like, yeah, suicide, and they're like, oh my gosh, there was so much unsolicited judgment. I don't know, judgment is always unsolicited, I think, but there was always so much unsolicited judgment that, they're like, oh my gosh, how could he ever do that to her? Why would he ever leave a child behind? I don't know if people realize that they do that.
I'm sure they're not meaning to make it worse,
Yeah.
But there is judgment around that. And it's hard for people that haven't dealt with mental health issues or people that have had them in their lives to understand that sometimes those people feel like that really is the only way out.
Well, and when it happened, I was like, I get it. I had never really had somebody close to me other than him, commit suicide and pass away from that. And once it had happened, I was like, oh, I get it. Because he had suffered his entire life. He had childhood trauma. Wasn't, raised in the best atmosphere. And, he had drug addiction and severe mental health issues that he had been trying to cope with his entire life. And so it made sense to me that this was the option. So with
as
that
a
being said,
as a child, like, what was your understanding then of suicide, and what's your understanding now? And what would you have to say about
good
it?
question.
I never blamed him. I don't think. Maybe for a short time I did. But
You were never, like,
knowing,
mad at him for leaving?
yeah, maybe for a little bit I was. And then any thoughts of that kind of just went away. Because then I had to come to the realization that he did go through a lot within his life. And he did suffer a lot. And with that, he felt that suicide was the only option. And I don't blame him for that because of all the pain that he went through during his life. And now I have that same mentality that, like, he went through a lot, and that was what he felt like was his only option.
And I feel like
So that's
it's
what you
needed
would
to say.
Oh, sorry. The froze. Sorry, edit that out because it froze and then I
Edit.
talked over you.
So, with that being said, I think throughout the course of his life and our co-parenting relationship, him and I had a good communication. And I kind of wanted to make a morbid joke right there. Why does he always take the good ones? The one good co-parenting relationship. But, yeah, we had a good co-parenting relationship and a good communication. So whenever he was dealing with his mental health issues, and it was like his time with her or anything, like he would always call me and say, I'm not well. We're going to have to push it off another weekend, or, you know, it's going to have to be another time, or, you know, and I always was open with her as age appropriate as I could be. Like, you know, your dad's not feeling well this weekend. He's kind of sad. You know, I'd say things like that. Like, he's feeling pretty sad, or, you know, he needs to go to the doctor, or, you know, like things like that. Like, we would never hide or cover up his mental health. It was always talked about in an age appropriate way.
I think
So.
that probably, I would imagine, and you can speak to that yourself, Ella, but do you think that that helped you to find understanding in knowing that, like, mental health was such a big part of it because you'd already kind of heard about his mental health before?
Yeah, I was just about to say this, that having an understanding of what he was going through while he was going through it helped when he had passed away. Because I understood why. It wasn't like just like an all of a sudden, like, what? I never heard this before. It was, okay, this is what happened and this is why, and I know why, and I've always known what he was going through. In a way, obviously. And I think also I want to talk about other people's understanding, because like my mom was saying, nobody else was in it. Nobody else understood what we understood going through it. And everyone was so quick to say things and to ask me things, like at school. And there was a really strong memory that I have of my aunts. I was like in my room, my aunts were in the living room, and they were talking about my dad. And I just remember them saying, how dare he do that? How dare he leave her? He had a child to think about. And I remember thinking, why would they say that? They don't know a single thing about what he was going through, about who he was, about how hard he fought through his life. And it was just a really big realization that nobody else knows what or understood who he was.
Yeah. I think that anger can be a really big part of grief, though. You know, and I'm assuming these are his sisters, your aunts that you're talking about?
These
They
were married in family aunts.
So, I mean, when you're seeing somebody that you love go through pain that was optional, it can be, it's understandable that those people would be angry. Like, I am so upset at him for doing this to you, you know, and that unfortunately is a part of grief, and you have to work through those anger feelings too. And anger is really just sadness being manifested in a different way. It's easier to express anger than it is to be like, I'm really fucking sad. It's easier to be like, I am so mad at you for doing this, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
That made me emotional. So, advice to people that are having to deal with suicide. What is your advice to them, Ella?
Obviously everyone's experiences are different, so I don't think there's one, like, solid resolution, I'll say. But I do want to say that what you're experiencing right now and what is happening in your life right now is not going to be happening forever. It's not how you're going to feel forever. And there's so many bigger things waiting for you on the other side of what you're going through right now that you just have to be hopeful for that and focus on that. Because if you focus on what you're feeling now, you're never going to get through it.
No.
I'm just having a proud mom moment right now. Just let me relish in this.
Yes, revel in that. As a person that understands suicide, Ella, like, you have a good understanding of it, what would you say to somebody that is thinking about committing suicide? Because I think that is one of the most beautiful gifts that come from dealing with things, tragedies like this, is the lessons that we learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if you can give somebody some hope or some advice that's thinking about doing that.
I think it's not even the advice. I want to ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
Just to hear this, I think, will be the advice. Okay? Throughout the years of your growing up and getting bigger, what are you sad about him missing out on?
That's a good question. I'm sad. I look at a lot of other father-daughter relationships, and I think that's the biggest thing, is seeing my friends be able to have dads and me not being able to have that. So it's sort of like jealousy, I guess. And obviously, like, my wedding day, he won't be there to, like, walk me down the aisle. And obviously I have substitutions for that, but none of them are him. And it's never going to be him. And, like, he's not going to see me drive. He's not going to see me, like, in my prom dress. He's not going to be there for Christmas. I'm not going to get to spend summers with him. Just little things like that. And every once in a while I'll have a moment like, dang, I wish my dad was here to see this. But then I know that he's here. Not physically, but he is here with me, and he is watching me grow up. Even though I can't see him in, like, normal human form, I'll say, he is here, and I do feel him with me.
Well said.
Yeah.
I think that's where my grief comes into about it all. Is, like, we'll go through a moment, like, she just got her permit, she's going to prom. I think about graduation, I think about weddings, I think about all of that, and I'm like, dang it, I wish you were here, you know? And it's almost like that anger comes out, because I'm like, I want to share this with you, damn it. You know?
I feel like I can't not say what I have to say right now, and that...
Say it. Say the things.
Although we have this deep understanding, each of us has this deep understanding of people, like, why they did what they did, and you guys have really come to make peace with that. For other people, I don't want that to sound like, hey, suicide's totally okay, because people are going to make peace with it. And instead, I want to make sure that we're touching on, like, the reason we bring these things up is because if you could just get through this moment, if you could just get through this hard moment onto the other side of it, like, you'll get to be here and you'll get to see all these things that these people are missing out on, you know? And this pain that has come, which might have come eventually anyway. Like, Ella probably would have outlived her dad, but he could have gotten to see and be here and experience all these things with her before leaving this earth. And that's the part about suicide that sucks, is you rob yourself of years that you could have had, and you rob other people of experiences with you that they could have had. Whew. Makes me emotional.
It's definitely emotional. I don't want to seem like we're emotionless. I think that we've just done so much work in the topic that it's almost kind of cathartic. Is that how you say it? To share?
Really, you've had enough time with it that you have been able to make peace with it. And I think that is really beautiful. And people that are going through it need to see that, someday this is what it can look like. All this pain that you're feeling right now, you're going to work through that, and you're going to get to this place where they've found peace around it. But that's not to take away the immense pain that you guys went through in the moments that it was happening.
Right. And not to say that we don't have moments like that.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely moments where we hug and ugly cry, and I yell and scream and say, F you because you did this. There's still moments like that. But they're lesser and lesser as we've recognized and honed in on more so. Now it's about advocating for me. For me anyway, it's about advocating and sharing so that other people who are experiencing this, like you said, can walk through it and see, oh, there is a better part of it.
That is one of the blessings of grief too, or of going through hard stuff in general. You can be a person that actually understands what somebody's going through because you have real life experience. Do you find that sometimes you're called to do that for other people, Ella?
Yeah, I definitely think that a situation has never really came up that I recall that I was able to help someone else struggling in this way. But I definitely think that if it was, I would know how to help. I would know what to say. And another thing I want to say is that right now, after I've gone through all of it and after I've come out the other side, is that I don't really remember my dad. I don't really remember his voice, what he looked like stuff like that. And obviously I can look back at old pictures or videos, but it's not the same as knowing who he is. And even though I don't know who he is and exactly what he was like, sometimes my mom will say stuff like, oh, you just did something, you look just like your dad.
It's usually a dance move.
Yeah. It's you just look like your dad. You just did that. That was your dad. And those moments make me so happy to know that, even though I don't know who he is, really, he's still, half of me. He is within me. And that's really gives me peace of mind to know that even though he's not here and I don't know who he is, he is within me and within my life still.
It's finding beauty in the grief. And I like that
For
you guys
sure.
are able to do that. You guys are also able to find some humor in it, and I like
Yeah.
that. You guys crack jokes about it. Do you find that people understand that, or are they like, "Oh my God, did you just crack a joke about that?"
Some people are like, "Whoa,
That's a
calm
little
down."
much.
Yeah, but I've learned to read the room, read who I'm around, and know when it's appropriate, and not to make people uncomfortable. Because there's no other way to get through it, I guess. Now, being at peace with it, it's what else is there to do? A joke here and there is a little funny.
And I think it's hilarious because if anybody knew your dad, they would know that he would do the same thing.
Yeah.
So, there's another reason.
On the topic of, humor and looking at the bright side, I want to ask my weird question, which is, what good has come to you from losing your dad? Because I feel like in any tragedy or bad thing that happens to us, there are always gifts in the ashes of that.
I think I've become a very emotionally intelligent person
I would agree with
since
that statement.
100%.
thanks. since going through all of that, I've learned how to deal with my emotions and how to articulate them and know what I'm feeling and how to make myself feel better. Mm-hmm. And I've also gained a better understanding of other people and how they're feeling. And also the spiritual side. Like, my relationship with God, I'll say, has gotten so much stronger from this, because I always had an understanding of God, but since my dad passed, it's just grown so much more in a way that, like, I can't really say in words. But I definitely think my spiritual relationship as well as my emotional intelligence has gotten a lot stronger with the passing of my dad.
I think that's true for a lot of people. You know, like, you get cracked open, and then it's almost like because you've experienced the big emotion of grief, like, you're also able to experience some other things.
Yeah.
It sort of changes the way in which you view the world, which isn't always a bad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the spiritual stuff, too, because, like, we'll talk about, like, I'll tell her, like, if I see him in dreams, like, oh, your dad came to visit last night. And to some people, that's, like, that's a little weird. But to us, that's like oh, cool, what happened? You know? Like, we just kind of talk about it.
Do you want to share your experience from
the other day?
You called me?
Yeah, I shared it with her, too. So, I had, like, this really vivid dream where, and it happens, I don't know, very sporadically, but he will come and just pop into a dream, and we will sit down and we will talk, and he will ask me, like, what's Ella doing, how's she doing, and I'll update him on all of the things. And to me, it's legitimately him coming from the spiritual world, because dreams are a place where people can meet between worlds. I 100% believe that. And I'll tell him all about it, and then he'll just be on his way. And then that's the dream. And then I go back to whatever else I was dreaming about. Like, he just kind of pops in and pops out. And then I'll wake up. And so that morning I woke up, and I feel like the dream is so real, because I feel like it is, that it takes me a minute to kind of get out of it. I'm somewhat emotional afterwards. And so I'm doing my workout that morning, and I keep perseverating on this word on one of my signs that says sorry. It actually says don't be sorry, just to put it in context. So I was like, I kept perseverating on that word, and I'm like, okay, Anthony, if this is you, like, show me an animal outside. And, like, not 5 minutes later, a deer comes by and just stands by the fence as I'm working out for a good 20-30 minutes. And then, like, the deer is standing there, and then a baby deer comes up, and then another deer comes up. So it's a family of 3 that's just kind of chilling there. And so I actually go get her during my workout. I'm all sweaty and gross. I'm like, you gotta come look at this. And she's like, you're kind of freaking me out. I was like, no, it's a good thing, I promise.
Big deal, Mom. There's the deer. What? Why'd you make me do this?
Yeah. Right, and then I told her about the dream and all of that, and I'm huffing and puffing, and, you know, we just kind of had a moment. And that was really cool. That stuff still happens 7 years later.
I've definitely had experiences like that too. Like, I think that people that have passed can definitely come to you in dreams or in, like, signs. Like, somebody I know who lost their mom, they see dragonflies a lot. And dragonflies are, like, her and her mom's thing. So she'll see a dragonfly and she's like, I know that's my mom talking to me.
I feel like you have to share your bird story.
My bird story?
Yeah.
Okay. This is a weird story. So I've lost both my parents, and
we'll talk about that.
We're gonna get into that in another episode. But a few days before my dad passed away, I was driving home from Tucson, and this bird, like, committed suicide on my windshield. Like, there was no way to avoid it. Like, the bird hit me in the windshield. It was the most bizarre thing, scared the crap out of me. And I feel like I probably called my sister, and I was just like, dude, this bird just killed itself on my windshield. That was so crazy. And my dad wasn't sick. There was nothing, like, wrong with him, really. Like, I mean, he was an alcoholic, and he would be in and out of the doctors a lot because he was an alcoholic. But he wasn't like, you have 6 months to live or anything like that. 2 days later, my dad died. Which, that in itself wouldn't be a big deal, okay? Wouldn't be a big deal. But then, it's going to make me emotional. When my mom was in the hospital, and she was real bad, like, I kept thinking, like, she's going to get better, she's going to get better, she's going to get better. And I was driving home. She was also in Tucson. She was transferred to a hospital in Tucson. And I was driving home from Tucson, and another bird hit my freaking windshield. And I was like, in that moment, it's like, it was almost like
It kind of like, yeah.
like, no. Like, I knew. And 2 days later, my mom died. Then we were in Ireland year before last year. And we were driving, and I wasn't driving this time, but a bird hits our freaking windshield. And my uncle was in the hospital. 2.5 days later, my uncle died. So it's like this thing that happens when somebody close to me is going to die. And it's the most bizarre thing. Like, if it had happened one time, I would have thought, like, no big deal. It would never have occurred to me again. And the fact that I could even remember that it happened the first time is bizarre to me. Like, it's like one of those moments that just, like, stands out. Like, hey.
It was like a catalyst moment, yeah.
Yeah. And that's just my weird, bizarro experience with that. But I totally believe in signs from the other side and people being able to communicate with you. So
Yeah, for sure.
I would have been burned at the stake for that years ago.
Look, have we come along, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, well, is there any last closing statements that you feel like listeners would want to hear from out of this conversation? Any burning thoughts?
Anything you feel like you need to say that hasn't been said? Advice?
And thank you for sharing the bird story. I appreciate that.
I like that story. Gosh, I don't know, because I feel like I've had so many thoughts, but they just aren't coming out now.
It's okay.
But I guess that means they're not meant to come out, so I guess not.
Well, I appreciate you. Every time we record these episodes, I always feel like I get a deeper understanding of the topic. And this episode was so near and dear to me. Mm-hmm. And I'm so proud of you for the person that you've become.
Don't cry. Thank you.
I'm not going to cry. I'm going to try not to cry. I'm just so proud of you sharing your story. And anybody listening who wants to reach out and have a chat with any of us, please do. Ask us questions.
In any way you feel the need to grieve. I told my 10-year-old son this because somebody close to his dad's family just recently committed suicide. And I just want to say, like, you are allowed to grieve in any way you want to grieve. Like, if crying is how you need to grieve, cry. If you can't get the tears out, that's okay. You don't have to cry. If all you can do is just be there to support each other, that's enough. And, you know, we are all going to be given moments where we have to grieve people we love. Like, nobody makes it out alive. None of us are going to make it out of here alive. So every one of us is going to die. And we're all going to have to deal with grief in some form. And I think that if we could just all be good humans and be there for the people that are hurting, we're all going to know what that feels like, and we're all collectively here together. And if we could just be together for that, I think that can change everything.
Oh, yes. What a wonderful episode to kick off the month, huh? So stay tuned to everything else. We will be talking about grief all month.
Where you will be featuring me cry every single episode. I can guarantee.
I will for sure shed tears. I will for sure shed tears.
And
but thank you all.
Shed tears, I'll shed more tears because I'm just fun like that. I'm really supportive.
Sympathy crier.
Yeah.
So thanks everybody for listening. Thank you very much for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
And if you know somebody that's going through grief and you think that this episode could help them, please share it with them. You know.
Yep.
Be there for somebody that needs you.
Yes. All right. Thank you, friends. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.
Love you.